In the beginning, man hunted and man gathered. Then came domesticity, fermentation, terraforming, irrigation, cultivation, distillation, Haber-Bosch, GMO, tasty videos, sourdough. I'm Matt Newberg, and this is Sourdough Starter. More than just the makings of bread, starters contain a microcosm of what goes on inside our guts, mouths, skin, and vaginas. Just like us, every sourdough starter contains a unique community of microbes, which we in turn shape through nutrition and climate to our desired tangs. We also do the same to ourselves. We're talking prebiotics, probiotics, hormones, nootropics, tanning beds, CrossFit, subscription this, keto that, naturally certified reduced fat, CBD, omega-3. Because as we all know, shopping is cheaper than therapy. What happens when the products choose you? Let's get acquainted. Genetically speaking, you could say it all started on the origin of species, or perhaps with Gregor Mendel, cause and effect, dominant recessive, all housed in a phosphor-rich acid lysed out from white blood cells. Breaking it down, we get DNA, RNA, nucleotides A, T, G, and C. Grouping them, we get transposons, also known as jumping genes. Rosalind Franklin develops DNA's first photograph, for which Watson and Crick conform its molecular shape, inspiring Nierenberg et al.'s genetic coding dictionary, which is still in use today. Phi X174 provides the first full genomic map, and since then the method has largely remained the same, albeit amplified, bridged, scaled real-time for every chromosome in our human DNA. In recent years, the price of DNA testing has continued to fall, now making its way into the realms of consumer use. You've probably seen 23andMe, Ancestry.com, or Vitagene, but these only show us our hereditary human DNA, and for most of us, that's largely the same. Per the Weizmann Institute of Science, this DNA only accounts for 40% of our cellular composition. The remaining 60% instructs somewhere between 30 to 70 trillion microbes lining our organs and mucosal tissue. Inside the proverbial engine of our bodies, these colonies coat one of the largest interfaces between you, the host, and the environment in which you inhabit. This system spans over 9 meters in length and features more than 20 specialized cell types. As food moves through our body, our liver, pancreas, and gallbladder secrete enzymes that break down nutrients into parts that can be absorbed through the walls of the small intestine before being transported through our blood. Excess fiber, water, and dead cells are then passed through and stripped of further nutrients before turning into stool. This entire process takes around 30 to 40 hours and is regulated by a network of nerve connections and hormones that modulate our metabolism and, in turn, our sense of well-being.
Metabolism is the set of mechanisms that generate energy from our food and environment in order to power basically every single cell in the body. So,
meet Dr. Casey Means, functional medicine practitioner and co-founder of Levels Health.
Fats and carbohydrates are both the big contributors to how we generate energy in the body. When carbohydrates are broken down, they generate glucose in the blood, and glucose is this molecule that our cells take in, and then it's converted into a form of energy that we can use called ATP, and that's done in the mitochondria. And the body works super hard to keep glucose in a really tight range in the bloodstream. And it does this by releasing a hormone insulin from the pancreas, which lets the cells take up the glucose to be converted into energy. And when there's an excess of glucose, some of that energy is either stored as change of glucose in what's called glycogen, and that's stored in the liver and the muscle, or it's converted into fat. when we do this repeatedly, like over and over again every day, and we're doing, the more glucose we have in our bloodstream, the more insulin that's released. Basically, the cells will see all this insulin and say, oh my gosh, this is too much insulin. Like, we're going to sort of stop responding to it. We can't fit any more glucose in the cells. So like halt. And that's a process called insulin resistance.
As a result, your pancreas produces even more insulin to try and get your cells to respond. This feedback loop elevates your resting blood sugar level, setting the stage for prediabetes and type 2 diabetes.
That's happening not just in one part of the body, it's happening everywhere. And when that happens in really important parts of the body, like the brain, it can be disastrous.
According to the Mayo Clinic, insulin resistance in brain cells plays a central role in Alzheimer's, which they are now referring to as type 3 diabetes. If you take the more than 5 million Americans currently diagnosed with Alzheimer's dementia and add that to our existing diabetes patient pool, you get a country with the population of Iraq and the GDP of Mexico.
Basically, you move on in the wrong direction of insulin sensitivity as you constantly spike your glucose in your bloodstream and spike your insulin, but you can improve your insulin sensitivity by keeping your glucose stable and relatively stable, relatively flat, not causing huge spikes, and ultimately keeping your insulin exposure down, and your cells will regain their sensitivity over time. And that's very positive for the body.
Alcohol white. Sensor applicator. Cover. Line up, gray line on sensor. That felt like absolutely nothing. This is a continuous glucose monitor, and it is definitively the future of health and fitness, and I am stoked to show you all about it. But also, it is definitively the past of health and fitness because it was approved by the FDA in 1999. Diabetics have been using these for 2 decades to see their blood sugar in real time. Now the company Levels and their app is bringing CGM to everyone.
There are a lot of things that lead into this glucose readout. The main things are, behaviorally, are sleep, stress response, exercise, and food. We take those different pieces of information, put them into what's called a zone, score that zone, and then over time, as you log lots of different behaviors and activities, you can start to use sort of metabolic awareness and what we call like a metabolic toolbox, so that you kind of know what to pair together to really get that flat glucose line.
Your diet habits, your sleep schedule, your exercise routine, your stressors are just one data point. So, enough about you. Let's talk about us.
You, me.
Meet Matthias Diederichs, biohacker.
Oh, Matt, what do you got myself into?
1, 2. It's really nothing.
So, the last 14 days, I have been wearing a sensor on my arm. A sensor that you can check. This over here is the level of glucose in my blood right now.
And in this experiment, I'm going to check what happens if I consume bread. And then what happens if I consume bread, but before I consume the bread, I drink a little bit of apple cider vinegar. Apparently, when you drink apple cider vinegar, it should decrease the spike that I would get from consuming the bread. If I eat bread, which is quite rare, I prefer to go for sourdough, and I wouldn't be a true Dutchman if I wouldn't put cheese on my bread. Biological cheese. It's been a while that I ate cheese and bread. So for the record, that's 4 slices of bread.
So today I'm going to be having a bagel with cream cheese. Very excited. Love it. Love a carby breakfast.
Today I'm going to have a California veggie burger. Let's see how it goes.
This is quite interesting. It's now been 15 minutes. This is like slightly going down. In my head it's sort of going up. I don't know why, but I do feel a bit tired. Let's see in an hour or so.
My glucose went up from 4.7 to 6.8. So clearly bagels do a little bit of damage.
My glucose has spiked a bit, and it does make my brain a little foggy.
Of course, I'm gonna dilute this. This is apple cider vinegar. Just a tiny bit.
Cheers.
2 hours later.
Bagel, delicious. Apple cider vinegar and water, actually not so delicious, but you can just chug it. and my glucose has gone up to 6.9. So the apple cider vinegar didn't really seem to have much of an effect.
My CGM did not spike the way it did when I did not have the apple cider vinegar. I definitely saw a difference.
All right, now it's been more than 2 hours. It's not that big of a dip. I was expecting a much steeper dip actually, given the fact how I felt after consuming the food. So what does this learn us?
Your DNA, your microbiome, your lifestyle, and your food tolerances and intolerances, they are so complex. This is enormous.
This is Piet Hein van Dam, founder of Clear, a personalized diet program based in the Netherlands.
Some meals are really strong discriminators. So they place you in a different cluster. Sushi is one of them. Salmon is one of them. Goat cheese is one of them. Avocado, potatoes is one of them, right? So we recommend people to test these things in the first 2 days. And then our recommender goes and says, hey, listen, people like you also go well on pokeball. Why don't you try it? And the pizza is probably not too bad for you. Why don't you try it? And then within 2 hours, we can see if this recommendation actually holds, right? Because if your post-meal response is indeed flat, as we expected, then our AI learning cycle is closed successfully.
Oh yeah, it's like sticking to the fucking spoon. You and the microorganisms inhabiting you are a superorganism. And there's a barcode on it. This collection of bacteria, archaea, and eukarya has co-evolved with you over thousands of years to form an intricate and mutually beneficial relationship. Over the course of your lifetime, around 60 tons of food will pass through your GI tract, along with an abundance of microorganisms from the environment in which you live, work, and play. Your diet presents the most direct way to manage your metabolism and well-being. So, what are your 4 pounds made of?
I start my morning with plain full-fat yogurt and raspberries or blueberries. I'm a dairy milk kind of a guy.
Meet Aaron Del Duca, VP of Microbiome Platform at Day 2, a precision nutritional program based in Tel Aviv.
The way we created this thing was we ran a few clinical trials that spanned over 8 years and 2 continents. We did some of the pioneering original work at the Weizmann Institute in Israel. And what we did was we linked these folks to continuous glucose monitors. We measured a whole bunch of different blood biomarkers as well as omics biomarkers like metabolites, the microbiome, the human genome. And in not a rules-based fashion, but in a true machine learning fashion, we asked the machine to solve for balancing one's blood sugar levels with the inputs of that individual, their profile, as well as the macronutrient breakdown of the food that they were about to consume. So we feel like we're nearing that shoulder, and that's why we don't need a CGM for you to predict how you're likely to respond.
It's like Minority Report for what you're about to put in your body.
That's right.
No more self-diagnosing, no more guessing. If we can predict it, then why not shape it? In an ever-expanding sea of options, one can only ask, is there such a thing as the perfect pill?
Is there a perfect solution for everybody that has IBS, for instance?
This is Sunny Jain, founder and CEO of Sun Genomics, a custom-formulated probiotic service based in San Diego.
You may have an IBS condition that is triggered by E. coli, but the next person that has an IBS condition could have that same trigger but by a completely different organism.
Simply rub the tip of the wand on the stool, collecting a sample that evenly coats the tip.
What we've typically done is sort of just think, oh, you have that single organism, let me just try to tackle it. But the gut system is much more complicated than that. They operate in little communities and ecosystems and are based off of nutrient supplies that are coming in. So when you put those into sort of a software algorithm, you can more easily drive that meaningful shift to get to the next tier of your microbiome.
Send in the sample, wait 45 days. Can one pill a day keep the doctor away?
A doctor is not really trained on probiotic organisms through medical school.
No.
So that can all be done through software and services where we can enable that doctor to be like, here you go.
Per the Royal Society of Medicine, it takes an average of 17 years for research evidence to reach clinical practice, while in the case of genomic sequencing, microbiome testing has achieved consumer-level adoption in just 4 years. With telemedicine now reaching near ubiquity thanks to a global pandemic, and gene therapy appearing more clearly on AlphaFold's horizon, how will personalization connect the dots in the here and now?
I think we're going to see a massive shift of companies having to respond to people saying, this is crazy what this is doing to my blood sugar. I want a different option.
Now you can already make some filters by, I'm a diabetic patient, I have gluten intolerance, so it's already filtered. But in 5 years' time, that will be fully personalized.
I mean, just imagine Siri giving you suggestions on, Matthijs, perhaps you would like to try.
Right now, I can pull out my phone and look at my microbiome, right? Just think 10 years down the road, how sophisticated that information will become.
My expectation in that time frame is to use the microbiome to tailor nutrition to solve for X.
This is us, this is you and me, formerly known as the target segment.
Where X is a whole host of metabolic parameters, digestive parameters, and even gut-brain parameters. I'm talking about depression, anxiety.
It's so strange that technology allows us to sort of look inside where normal humans before were not really able to look inside and get information out of yourself that can help you optimize your performance, your well-being, your sleep. I mean, pretty much anything that revolves around being you.
As personalization scales in adoption, consumer loyalty programs present a cost-effective way to bundle health insurance with wearables and nutritional programs, amongst other things. Take, for instance, Amazon's acquisition of online pharmacy PillPack in 2019, or their launch of the Halo Band in partnership with the Mayo Clinic, Weight Watchers, and John Hancock Life Insurance.
Generally, that's how capitalism works, is you get rewarded if it's a really productive idea. The downside to that is that we get trapped in a machine learning enabled echo chamber.
On top of the one we've already been in for the last 10,000 years. And more specifically, these last 50.
I think nutrition can be a powerful paradigm where we can unequivocally show that when that happens, things go bad.
If your personal file contains your medical file, that is a very complex situation, right? If there's prevalence of diabetes in your family, you may be a high-risk employee.
I mean, I've been eating healthfully for quite some time, but despite that, the last couple of annual physicals I had, I was on the cusp of being pre-diabetic.
About half of the folks in the United States receive their healthcare through their employer. And many of the folks that are affected by, diabetes, prediabetes, obesity, it wouldn't be as accessible to them if they had to pay out of pocket.
The average diabetes patient spends an additional $100,000 over the course of their lifetime, 2/3 of which goes towards outpatient care, with half of that going towards prescription medication. This is a traffic jam decades in the making. But with intelligent oversight and full stack integration, we just might be able to tip the needle.
Until that moment is hit, we're sort of left to kind of do this on our own.
In the meantime, helping people realize what's actually going on in their bodies, I think, is a first step to drive a lot of these things, to drive both food decisions and voting decisions.
What would be some of the biggest lessons you've learned that you wish you kind of learned earlier?
I think it's to take it all more seriously. Diet, exercise, and stress. For me, meditation is a big piece, mindfulness, and being in nature. Yeah.
When do you think realistically human beings will land on Mars for the first time?
I feel fairly confident about 6 years from now.
You are about to travel to the Morimoto Mars colony.
This is the way biology works, right? For whatever reason, there are these selection pressures, and the systems that respond slowly are subject to the ones that respond quickly.
What the human gut might resemble in the year 2030 is anyone's guess, but one thing is for certain. Evolution is cleverer than we are.